You know, nothing much going on in life at the moment, so I thought I'd take a look at some of your old tweets. And one stood out, Danny, that I think you put out last month. Manchester United are only 2 or 3 signings away from winning the title. Were you drunk?
No, not at all. 2 or 3 players away from challenging. You're twisting my words now, which I think that they are. You know, you look at them last season. Okay, the problem, the teams at the top of the league, what they have is consistency. United's biggest problem was the lack of consistency. That was their main consistency throughout the season. But when you look at the players that they've been linked to, you look at the difference that Fernandes has made by coming in. You know, you look at a Sancho, you look at a Grealish, you've got Paul Pogba to come back if he still wants to be at the club. There's no doubt he's a world-class midfielder. Then I think when you put it into context, I think Manchester City, you know, I look at the people or the teams that are going to be challenging Liverpool. Manchester City, in my opinion, now they need a rebuild. Whether Guardiola will be there to see that through, I'm not too sure. So that puts them in a little bit of a different predicament. So therefore, I don't see any reason why Manchester United, if they can bring the right players in, you know, like a Sancho, a Grealish, potentially a defensive midfielder, then I think they'll be in a position to be able to challenge. And I think you only have to look at the January transfer signings in terms of Fernandes. Him alone has taken the team up to another level. So if you imagine another 2 or 3 top-class players coming in, it's going to do the world of good for the players that are around them and only make them improve as well. No doubt Craig will probably disagree, though.
Dan, hold on a minute. Let's just backtrack slightly. So what you got to understand with this show, you'll get away with nothing, or even things you said months.
That's fine. You've got to back it up.
Maybe even years ago. Yeah, but I just want to pick you up on one point in particular. You just said, wait for this. You just said Manchester City need a rebuild, and Manchester United are only 2 to 3 players away from challenging or winning the title.
Yes, 100%. Because Craig, if you look at the reason I'm saying it is that if you look at where Manchester City have been to where they have fallen, have they had a worse season than last season? 100%. They've lost Vincent Kompany, David Silva's leaving. That's 2 world-class players. There are other players around that are starting to age, and they have problems as well. So that's why I say the rebuild. We don't know what's going to happen with Guardiola. If I look from United's perspective, are they in a better place as in terms of what they were last season, in terms of their identity and going forward? 100%. The reason Liverpool have walked away with the league this season is, yes, Liverpool have been unbelievable, but Manchester City are not the same team as what they were last season. So that's why I'm saying Manchester City at some point are going to need a rebuild, which Manchester United obviously are going through at the moment, but will be a few steps ahead of that.
Well, I mean, I understand the defensive issues at Manchester City and the David Silva leaving in one, but David Silva wasn't playing as regular in the last 12 to 18 months as he has been. There's been other players that have been able to come in and do a job. They've got an unbelievable amount of quality players that can bring off the bench. Phil Foden can come in and do a job there as well. Of course, they didn't get the centre-halves they wanted in the summer. They were sniffing around Harry Maguire, but they didn't want to pay the money. And then they had the injuries, particularly to Aymeric Laporte. It hasn't helped. So they do need to go out and add some quality players. But I certainly wouldn't go down the road of Manchester City need a rebuild. And the other side of the coin with United is, I think they're a good half a dozen players away, because when you look to your bench, and you're going to need a squad to compete with these clubs, the Cities and the Liverpools, maybe even Chelsea. We'll see what happens with Arsenal as well. You're going to need to look to your bench and have quality. Dan knows this. I've sat in this show many times, and the first thing that I've brought up when Man City are playing is, and not so much this season, but over the past couple of years, is look at their bench. Look at who they have on the bench. They would walk into almost any other team in the Premier League. And that's United's big problem.
But the thing is, if like I'm saying, you know, you need 2 or 3 new players, 2 or 3 top-notch players that can make a difference for United, as in terms of getting them higher up the league and putting them in a position to be able to challenge. What that means then, if you're going to do that, then you're going to have 2 or 3 regulars that are going to go out of the team. They can make a little bit of a difference coming off the bench. Now, what I mean is, in terms of Manchester City, is in terms of their rebuild, we don't know what's going to happen with Guardiola. We don't know what's going to happen with the Champions League side of things. Is that going to make players want to leave the club and look elsewhere where they can go and get Champions League football? Nobody knows that. But I just feel is that if you look at United as in terms of where they've been and where they're trying to aspire to get back to, they're definitely on the upward side of things. Where you look at Manchester City, phenomenal team still. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying that Manchester United are better than them at all. But what I'm saying is from where Manchester City were, they aren't that team that they were the season before the one that's just finished. And we've seen that. The problems that they've had, you've got Fernandinho, arguably still one of the best defensive midfielders in world football. He's playing him at centre-back. Even when Laporte came back, he was still playing him at centre-back. So if you take Fernandinho, who, like I say, is absolutely imperative to Manchester City, if you haven't got a like-for-like for him and you're playing him at centre-back, that means you then have to bring another defensive midfielder in, another centre-back in. The left-back problem has never been solved because they've had so many different players playing there. And that's three. That's three players that would, initially make up your back 5 or 6 if you include in your goalkeeper, your other centre-back and your full-back. So that's why I look at it and think to myself that Manchester City have got a lot of work to do as well.
I don't deny Man City have got some issues, but you've had a week to think about this, Danny Higginbotham. And you're still painting a more. You've had a week to know that, and you're still painting a more positive picture at Old Trafford than you are at the Etihad. I mean, come on.
No, what I'm saying is, if you look at Manchester City, right? So if I said to you, Manchester City, are they a better or worse team than what they were last season? I know they need some patchwork. Huh?
Listen, they've got some issues. I understand that, but they've still got a fantastic squad of players. I understand there are some issues at Manchester City, particularly with the consistency. But, when you look at the game, I know Man United beat them twice, or at least twice. Was it twice or 3 times? I can't remember in the season. Right. I know, but a couple of the games, it was the defensive deficiencies or the problems that City have had in defence that caused the problems. They absolutely played Manchester United off the park. But for these defensive problems that they've had, the games were. The game at Old Trafford, Danny, in the cup, the first leg of the Carabao Cup was an embarrassment. 100%. It was an embarrassment.
But what I'm saying, Craig, is that I'm not saying that Manchester United are better than Manchester City. I'll ask you a normal question. All I want is a yes or no. Manchester City. Are Manchester City a better team than what they were last season? Or are they inferior than what they are last season? Forget the injuries. You've lost Vincent Kompany and you're having problems in certain other areas. Well, are City better or worse than what they were last season?
No, of course they're a poorer side than last season, but you can't forget the injuries. You can't forget the injuries.
I'm not disagreeing with
bottom
that.
Line.
Now, are United better or worse than what they were last season?
In terms of the league position, they're worse.
Is in terms of how their structure is, how they're looking to grow now.
In terms of the league
position,
to watch
now?
Well, you're asking me a question. Are United better to watch from an extremely low bar? I mean, yeah, they're better to watch than they were, but they still potentially could finish outside the top 6 or 7. Potentially, if this league was to kick on again, they could potentially finish outside the top 6 or 7. Just because they get a spark when the new signing come in doesn't mean Sheffield United weren't going to finish above them, or might, or Tottenham, or Chelsea, or Wolves, or anybody else for that matter. We know they're not going to finish above Manchester City. We know they're not going to finish above Liverpool. We know they're probably not going to finish above Leicester, but they could, these teams, theoretically finish above Man United. So I think the short-term bounce that Solskjaer got from the Fernandes signing is slightly masking over things in the long term for me.
But could they not finish in the top 4?
The problem is you have as well, Danny.
Well, they could.
Moving things on slightly. Is you talk about bringing 2 or 3 proper players that would come in and lift this side. Manchester United don't have the allure, do they, that they had in the past. You mentioned Jadon Sancho, who's currently playing for a team that's vying for a title, who's playing in the Champions League. You want to leave that to come to Manchester United to play for a manager who's still finding his feet despite the time that he's had at the club. It isn't a complete and utter layup, is it, to say, right, Sancho will definitely want to go to United if others are going to be knocking on the door?
Yeah, the attraction, obviously, over the years for United has been the success, has been the manager who's been in charge as well. But I don't think for 1 minute, if Manchester United wanted to sign Sancho, that they couldn't get him. I still think there is an allure about United. And one of the things that we've seen, and I can talk about it as a United supporter, looking at United over the years when they've needed that missing piece of the jigsaw.
If you were Jadon Sancho right now, you would go to Manchester United ahead of any other Premier League club?
What I'm saying is how many other Premier League clubs are in for him?
Would you or not say to him, go to Manchester United, whatever? Liverpool on the phone, Manchester City want him back, whatever. You would say go to United?
I would, because I look at the development of the younger players of the club. I look at
Danny,
what Solskjaer's doing. So I don't think there's any issue if he was to go there. There's a ready-made position for him, and I think the way that United play absolutely suits his style and the way that he wants to play with the pace and the power going forward.
Well, I think one of the issues is that you know, if Liverpool come knocking and you know they're going to be looking for a squad with Mane and Salah, and they're not getting any younger. You're looking at younger players coming in. You're also looking at the fact it's not as easy just to tempt players. You look at young Haaland who's gone to Borussia Dortmund. Man United were pretty desperate for him, but he made a big decision to go somewhere else. It's not that easy. I mean, the allure of Man United is there, but it's not. And as you know this, it's not quite the cut and dried signings that Sir Alex Ferguson used to do. Of
course.
When players wanted to go to the club primarily because they're a huge club, they're a successful club, but they had one, if not one of the, well, arguably the greatest manager in world football over the last 20 or 30 years. So it's a difficult scenario. I will tell you this though, Dan. Don't worry. We're not going to talk to you about Man United every time you come on this show.
I know. I just feel as though it's me against you two every time. I'm going to tell you there's a 99.999% chance it will happen because the producer has got a fixation with this Man United chat when Danny comes on. But trust me, we'll talk him out of it. Brilliant.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.